The Xinthian Empire's warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, their sleek obsidian hulls bristling with advanced weaponry. On the bridge of the flagship, Emperor Zoltar surveyed the blue-green world before him with a predatory gaze. "So this is the planet that dares to defy us," he mused, his voice a guttural rumble. "They will learn the folly of their resistance soon enough." He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to their leaders. It is time to issue our ultimatum." On Earth, the sudden appearance of the alien fleet sent shockwaves of panic and awe rippling across the globe. In the United Nations General Assembly, world leaders gathered to hear the message from the stars. The holographic image of Emperor Zoltar flickered to life, towering over the assembled dignitaries. "People of Earth," he began, his tone dripping with disdain. "I am Emperor Zoltar of the Xinthian Empire. Your world now falls under our dominion. You have two choices: surrender unconditionally and submit to our rule, or face annihilation. You have 24 hours to decide." As the transmission ended, a stunned silence fell over the chamber. Then, a cacophony of voices erupted as leaders argued and debated, some advocating for surrender, others for defiance. Amidst the chaos, President Alara Vega of the United States rose to speak. "We cannot give in to these invaders," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "Earth is our home, and we will fight to protect it. We must stand together, as one human race, against this threat." As the arguments continued, Dr. Lena Patel watched from the sidelines, her brilliant mind already racing with possibilities. She was the world's leading xenobiologist, and she knew that every species, no matter how advanced, had weaknesses. If they could find the Xinthians' vulnerability, they might stand a chance. With a determined set to her jaw, Dr. Patel slipped out of the assembly and headed for her lab. She had work to do, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. In the depths of space, the Xinthian fleet waited, poised to strike. Emperor Zoltar sat upon his throne, confident in his empire's might. No primitive species had ever withstood their onslaught, and these humans would be no different. But as the clock ticked down towards Earth's deadline, a glimmer of hope began to take shape in the heart of one brilliant scientist. The battle for Earth's future had only just begun. Dr. Lena Patel worked frantically in her lab, poring over the limited data they had on Xinthian biology. The aliens' ultimatum had sent the scientific community into overdrive, desperately searching for any advantage they could find. As she analyzed the readings from the Xinthian transmission, something caught her eye. There was an anomaly in their genetic structure, a weakness that could potentially be exploited. She cross-referenced the data with all known biological agents on Earth, searching for something that could target this vulnerability. And then, in a moment of stunning realization, she found it. There was a rare bacterium, found only in the deepest trenches of the ocean, that produced a toxin that could unravel the Xinthians' genetic structure. If they could weaponize it, they might stand a chance. Dr. Patel immediately brought her findings to the attention of Earth's leaders and top military minds. They were skeptical at first, but as she laid out the evidence, they began to see the potential. Under the utmost secrecy, Project Prometheus was born. Teams of scientists worked around the clock to cultivate the bacteria and develop a delivery system. It was a race against time, with the Xinthian deadline looming ever closer. As the project progressed, Dr. Patel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She had a chilling suspicion that the Xinthians had spies on Earth, monitoring their every move. Her fears were confirmed when a team of Xinthian infiltrators breached the facility, intent on stealing the research and sabotaging the project. In a heart-pounding confrontation, Dr. Patel and the security forces managed to neutralize the threat, but not before the aliens transmitted a portion of the data back to their fleet. Emperor Zoltar was furious when he learned of the humans' covert project. He ordered an immediate escalation of their invasion plans, determined to crush the resistance before they could complete their weapon. As alarms blared across the facility, Dr. Patel and her team worked with renewed urgency. They had come too far to fail now. The future of humanity depended on the success of Project Prometheus. In a tense countdown, the final pieces of the weapon fell into place. The delivery system was primed, and the toxin was ready. All they needed now was a way to get it aboard the Xinthian ships. Dr. Patel turned to the assembled military leaders, a fire burning in her eyes. "We have our weapon," she declared. "Now we need our Trojan horse." The room fell silent as a daring plan began to take shape, a plan that would place the fate of Earth in the hands of a brave few. The stage was set for a mission that would be remembered for generations to come. As she analyzed the readings from the Xinthian transmission, something caught her eye. There was an anomaly in their genetic structure, a weakness that could potentially be exploited. She cross-referenced the data with all known biological agents on Earth, searching for something that could target this vulnerability. And then, in a moment of stunning realization, she found it. There was a rare bacterium, found only in the deepest trenches of the ocean, that produced a toxin that could unravel the Xinthians' genetic structure. If they could weaponize it, they might stand a chance. Dr. Patel immediately brought her findings to the attention of Earth's leaders and top military minds. They were skeptical at first, but as she laid out the evidence, they began to see the potential. Under the utmost secrecy, Project Prometheus was born. Teams of scientists worked around the clock to cultivate the bacteria and develop a delivery system. It was a race against time, with the Xinthian deadline looming ever closer. As the project progressed, Dr. Patel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She had a chilling suspicion that the Xinthians had spies on Earth, monitoring their every move. Her fears were confirmed when a team of Xinthian infiltrators breached the facility, intent on stealing the research and sabotaging the project. In a heart-pounding confrontation, Dr. Patel and the security forces managed to neutralize the threat, but not before the aliens transmitted a portion of the data back to their fleet. Emperor Zoltar was furious when he learned of the humans' covert project. He ordered an immediate escalation of their invasion plans, determined to crush the resistance before they could complete their weapon. As alarms blared across the facility, Dr. Patel and her team worked with renewed urgency. They had come too far to fail now. The future of humanity depended on the success of Project Prometheus. In a tense countdown, the final pieces of the weapon fell into place. The delivery system was primed, and the toxin was ready. All they needed now was a way to get it aboard the Xinthian ships. Dr. Patel turned to the assembled military leaders, a fire burning in her eyes. "We have our weapon," she declared. "Now we need our Trojan horse." The room fell silent as a daring plan began to take shape, a plan that would place the fate of Earth in the hands of a brave few. The stage was set for a mission that would be remembered for generations to come. Word count: 481. Part 3. The Trojan Horse. Captain Liam Reeves stood before his team of elite operatives, their faces etched with determination. They had been chosen for a mission that was as audacious as it was desperate: to infiltrate the Xinthian flagship and deliver the bioweapon that could turn the tide of the war. "You all know what's at stake," Captain Reeves said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "The survival of our species hangs in the balance. We are the tip of the spear, the last line of defense. We will not fail." The plan was risky, bordering on suicidal. A small team would pose as a diplomatic envoy, offering a formal surrender to the Xinthians. Once aboard the flagship, they would unleash the toxin and pray that it worked as intended. As the team boarded their sleek, black stealth shuttle, Dr. Patel handed Captain Reeves a small, innocuous-looking device. "This contains the toxin," she explained, her voice tight with barely suppressed emotion. "Once activated, it will disperse the agent throughout the ship's ventilation system. You'll have a limited window to get out before it takes effect." Captain Reeves nodded solemnly, tucking the device securely into his tactical gear. He knew that there was a good chance none of them would return from this mission, but it was a sacrifice they were all willing to make. As the shuttle lifted off, streaking towards the Xinthian fleet under the cover of a sophisticated cloaking device, the mood was tense but resolute. Each member of the team knew their role, and they were prepared to carry it out with unwavering courage. When they docked with the flagship, they were met by a contingent of heavily armed Zynthian guards. The tension was palpable as Captain Reeves stepped forward, offering a formal declaration of surrender. For a moment, it seemed as though their ruse might be discovered. The Zynthian commander eyed them suspiciously, his hand resting on the hilt of his plasma sword. But then, seemingly satisfied, he gestured for them to follow. As they were escorted through the labyrinthine corridors of the ship, Captain Reeves and his team subtly took note of their surroundings, mapping out potential escape routes and weaknesses in the ship's security. When they were brought before Emperor Zoltar himself, the team had to fight to maintain their composure. The alien ruler radiated an aura of malevolence and cruelty, his eyes glinting with a sadistic intelligence. "So, the humans have finally come to their senses," Zoltar sneered, leaning forward on his throne. "I must admit, I'm disappointed. I had hoped for more of a challenge." Captain Reeves stepped forward, bowing his head in a show of submission. "We recognize the futility of resistance, Emperor Zoltar," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Earth surrenders unconditionally to the might of the Zynthian Empire." As Zoltar gloated, reveling in his perceived victory, Captain Reeves surreptitiously activated the toxin device. There was no turning back now. The team had to fight to maintain their composure as they were dismissed, knowing that the clock was now ticking. They had to get off the ship before the toxin took effect and all hell broke loose. As they hurried back towards their shuttle, alarms began to blare throughout the ship. The Zynthians had detected the foreign agent in their air supply, and they were going into lockdown. In a heart-pounding race against time, Captain Reeves and his team fought their way through the chaos, desperately trying to reach their extraction point. They could only hope that the toxin was doing its job, weakening the Zynthians and throwing them into disarray. As they finally launched from the flagship, explosions blooming in their wake, they knew that the real fight was just beginning. The Trojan horse had been delivered, but the war was far from over. As news of the successful infiltration spread, a new sense of hope began to take hold on Earth. The daring mission had proven that the Zynthians were not invincible, that they could be hurt, could be beaten. In the wake of the attack, the alien fleet was in disarray. The bioweapon had taken a heavy toll, weakening their forces and disrupting their command structure. It was the opening Earth had been waiting for. Under the strategic guidance of General Mayakor, Earth's military forces launched a coordinated counterattack. They had spent the last 24 hours analyzing the data from the infiltration team, identifying key weaknesses in the Zynthian defenses. Strike teams targeted the enemy's weapon systems, using EMP bursts to disable their plasma cannons and missile launchers. Fighter squadrons, piloted by Earth's bravest and most skilled, engaged the Zynthian craft in heart-pounding dogfights, their advanced tactics and sheer determination balancing the scales against the aliens' superior technology. On the ground, armies mobilized to defend key locations from Zynthian landing parties. They fought with a ferocity born of desperation, knowing that they were the last line of defense between their loved ones and the invaders. In the heart of the battle, a team of hackers led by the brilliant programmer Zach Kim worked to penetrate the Zynthian computer systems. If they could disrupt the aliens' communications and navigation, it would give Earth's forces an even greater advantage. As the battle raged on, stories of heroism and sacrifice began to emerge. A squadron of fighters, callsign Phoenix, stayed behind to cover the retreat of a damaged carrier, knowing that they would not survive. The lone soldier, Private Ava Reynolds, single-handedly held off a Zynthian assault long enough for civilians to evacuate, her bravery becoming legend. In the chaos of the fight, Dr. Patel and her team worked tirelessly to analyze the data coming in from the front lines. They needed to know how effective the bioweapon was, how long they could expect it to keep the Zynthians weakened. As the hours ticked by, it became clear that the tide was turning. The Zynthians were being pushed back, their losses mounting. For the first time since the invasion began, victory seemed within reach. But even as hope soared, Dr. Patel couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The Xinthians were too smart, too adaptable, to not have contingencies in place. She feared that this was only the beginning, that the true test was yet to come. Her fears were realized when a panicked transmission came in from the front lines. The Xinthians had unleashed a new weapon, a devastating energy beam that could vaporize entire city blocks in a single blast. The casualties were catastrophic. In that moment, Dr. Patel knew that their work was far from over. They had won a battle, but the war was entering a new, even more deadly phase. Earth would need every ounce of ingenuity, every shred of courage, to survive what was coming. As the smoke of battle began to clear, the true cost of their victory became apparent. Cities lay in ruins, millions had perished, and the Xinthian fleet, though battered, was far from beaten. Earth had shown that it would not go quietly into the night, that it would fight for its survival with everything it had. But as Dr. Patel looked out over the war-torn landscape, she knew that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The tide had turned, but the flood was still coming, and Earth would need to be ready. The Xinthians' retaliation was swift and brutal. Enraged by the success of Earth's sneak attack, Emperor Zoltar unleashed the full might of his empire against the human homeworld. Massive warships, each one bristling with advanced weaponry, descended upon Earth's major cities like avenging angels. Their energy beams carved paths of destruction, turning skyscrapers to rubble and reducing entire neighborhoods to ash. On the ground, Xinthian shock troops marched through the streets, their advanced exoskeletons rendering them all but impervious to Earth's weapons. They cut down soldiers and civilians alike, leaving a trail of carnage in their wake. In the face of this onslaught, Earth's forces began to buckle. Their hard-won gains were quickly erased as they were forced to retreat, giving up ground they had paid for in blood. In the command center, General Corps struggled to maintain order as reports of losses flooded in. They had known the Xinthians would strike back hard, but the scale and ferocity of the attack had caught them off guard. As the situation grew more dire, Dr. Patel and her team worked around the clock to analyze the data they had gathered from the front lines. The original bioweapon had weakened the Xinthians, but it wasn't enough. They needed something stronger, something that could turn the tide once and for all. Deep in her lab, surrounded by whirring machines and glowing screens, Dr. Patel had a breakthrough. By modifying the toxin's molecular structure, she could make it even more potent, targeting not just the Xinthians' physical strength, but their cognitive functions as well. It was a risky gambit. The enhanced bioweapon would be unstable, difficult to control. But with the Xinthians closing in, Earth was running out of options. As Dr. Patel presented her findings to the War Council, debate raged. Some argued that the risks were too high, that they couldn't afford to gamble with an untested weapon. But others, seeing the desperation of their situation, argued that they had no choice. In the end, it was General Corps who made the call. "We do this," she said, her voice steely with resolve. "We hit them hard and fast, with everything we've got. This is our last chance." The plan was set in motion. The daring mission was launched to deliver the enhanced bioweapon directly into the heart of the Xinthian fleet. It would require a team of Earth's bravest soldiers to fight their way to the Xinthian flagship and release the toxin at point-blank range. As the team prepared for their mission, saying tearful goodbyes to their loved ones, Dr. Patel worked to stabilize the bioweapon. She knew that the fate of humanity rested on her shoulders, that if she failed, all would be lost. When the time came, the team launched their assault, fighting their way through waves of Xinthian defenders. They took heavy losses, but they pushed forward, driven by a determination that transcended fear. In a heart-stopping moment, they reached the flagship's core, where the toxin needed to be released. But as they prepared to deploy the weapon, they were confronted by Emperor Zoltar himself, his eyes blazing with fury. A fierce battle ensued, the humans fighting with every ounce of strength and courage they possessed. And in the end, as the toxin was released and began to spread through the ship, It was Zoltar who fell, his reign of terror finally at an end. But even as the humans emerged victorious, they knew that the war was not over. The Zynthian fleet was in disarray, but they were far from defeated. Earth had bought itself a reprieve, but at a terrible cost. As the soldiers returned home, hailed as heroes, but haunted by the horrors they had witnessed, Dr. Petal knew that their work was just beginning. The road to recovery would be long and hard, and there would be more battles to come. But for now, in this moment, Earth could breathe again. They had stared extinction in the face and emerged, battered but unbroken, ready to fight another day. In the wake of the successful counterattack, the war entered a new phase. The Zynthian fleet, though severely weakened by the enhanced bioweapon, refused to surrender. Instead, they dug in, fortifying their positions around key strategic locations. Earth's forces, emboldened by their recent victories, went on the offensive. They targeted the